see why I would develop a great love and passion for coffee. I used to go to work right across the street from the Starbucks headquarters, right on 4th and Landers. I would take the bus and then land about 2 or 3 blocks away from Safeco Field. I don't know if anybody's been to Safeco Field. It's a fantastic baseball stadium. And I would walk over to work and would always kind of wander into the coffee shop down in the lobby and buy a cup of coffee and go. It's hard to imagine though that out of the entire coffee market, my contribution to that is only about 6 to 8 cups of coffee on a daily basis. The market is about 100 or so billion cups of coffee that are drank on a daily basis for the U.S. consumers. And out of those 100 and so billion cups of coffee, about 14 billion are actually sold in disposable cups. It's hard to imagine that quantity, but if you were to put those 14 plus billion cups of coffee end to end, they would circle the globe about 55 times. Now my 6 to 8 cups of coffee are just a small part in the whole big equation. But my actions and what I do today and how I do things actually makes a big impact when you're talking about how it affects the environment. What I want to do today is actually just talk to you a little bit about what is recycling, how recycling works, what's the recycling process. Ask you to evaluate your habits and just become part of the solution and see if we can all help out eliminate part of this material that is ending on our landfills day in and day out. If you're wondering what is recycling, recycling is just the process of turning used materials into new products by curtailing the use of fresh raw materials. How do I really understand what recycling is and how it actually benefits me? There's tons of information out there, and there's a lot of lists that would tell you all the great benefits of recycling. I'm just going to give you a couple of them to make you understand how important this issue really is. First of all, recycling saves energy. If you think about it, recycling one aluminum can actually save enough energy to run an average TV for about 2 hours. If you were to recycle a ton of newspaper, just 1 ton of paper alone, it could run an average American home for about 5 months. Recycling also saves space. It's easy to see how material that would normally end up in a landfill be used for something else. Pretty good common sense. Recycling also saves natural resources. By not using materials that you would normally end up fresh, for example, you could by recycling that same ton of paper, you could end up saving about 17 trays. That same amount of paper, if you were to recycle it, it would take an extra 7,000, or if you were not to recycle, it would take an extra 7,000 or so gallons of water. And the most important benefit of recycling, it is just plain the right thing to do. How does this recycling process work, and where do I really fit in? If you're asking yourself that question, the recycling process has 3 main components. The first component, and where you and I would typically come into it, would be you have to actually sort, collect, and grab the material to be turned over to some sort of recycling. This is where you and I could typically equate, gotta sort it, collect it. That could take a lot of time, right? That's time consuming. But I'm here to tell you that in reality, all it really takes is a minute or 2 extra a week of modifying and changing 1 or 2 simple habits in your daily life. Then we've got to turn those products that we sort and turn them into a manufacturing that will actually use them for a brand new product. And the last loop in the entire equation, where we would come back in, is we just have to look at the products that we're buying and evaluate their content to see if they have some sort of recycling component. Just like you and I evaluate the labels in our food when we go purchase it, so should we also look at the labels of the material that we're acquiring and see if they have some sort of recycling component. So what can I really do now that I know what recycling really entails? The first thing I'll ask you is just to evaluate your habits. Take a look at what you do with the material that you're actually discarding. And ask yourself this question: where is it going? For example, where's paper going? Did you know that paper makes about half, about 41% of all the material that ends up in a landfill? So I ask you, just think before you print. Do you really need this piece of paper when you're looking at something that you need to evaluate? Or is it something that you can actually put in a PDF or some sort of electronic component before you put it in? And if you need it, where is it going once you're actually done with it? Yard trimmings, we were just talking about that a second ago. Yard trimmings could be easily turned into compost for any landscape and actually increase nutrient loading and retain moisture control, and will beautify any garden here in the state of Florida. Plastic. Did you know that the average water bottle contains about 4 cents worth of water? And it could take up to 1,000 years to biodegrade in a landfill. It's the ratio there. Just by the mere action of buying one reusable water container, you and I could save about 100 water bottles from ending in the landfill. One action. Metal and aluminum. Think of that one can. That one can. Glass. By its mere nature, glass is made up entirely almost out of silica sand. It's a material that would hardly ever degrade in the natural environment. The only way it would degrade is if you crush it, pound it, or kind of weather it with some sort of action. It could take up to 1,000,000 years out in the environment for that material to decompose. Now, if the answer to your question is, what you do with this material is, I don't know, you just drop it in the trash and off you go, I ask you just to change some of those habits and take a look at what you're doing. And if you really need some extra help, just ask for it. Typically, your local or city, county solid waste division would be more than glad to give you some advice, and I'd be happy to give you more information too, as far as where you need to do or how you need to make changes. That does recycling, does it really matter? I say yes, and I ask you to consider the legacy you're going to leave your children as you buy that next water bottle, or order the next cup of coffee at your favorite Starbucks. Think of recycling. Now, I'm always looking for a way to head back to Seattle. I'm always planning, I love that city. The Emerald City is one of my favorite places in the U.S. And as I was planning my next trip to head back there, I was dumbfounded to find that the Florida Department of Environmental Protection estimated that we Floridians generate about 32 million tons of garbage a year. That's enough refuse to create a 4-lane highway about 3 feet high that would take us straight from here all the way into Seattle. Please proceed.